Hey Tom, welcome back.
Yeah.
Just to recap a little bit of where we left off last week, um, you had been dealing with some issues with your mother
Hmm.
um, regarding your self esteem. We talked a little bit about um, why it was okay for your mom to kind of blow you off when you asked for the apology, um, and why you just accepted that as something that was okay, even though you had told me on a couple of occasions that you really felt like you needed an apology emotionally for you
Hmm.
to kind of feel better about yourself.
Yeah.
Um, so why don't we start there,
Okay.
uh, and we'll get to the letter that you're writing to her a little bit later. But I want to focus right now on what you said and why you felt it was okay. So
I I told her, I told her I need a little bit of time to talk to her, and so I went over there last week, and I told her, how I felt, like we talked about in other sessions. I talked about how I felt, and she said that she was going to be going into a 12-step program for
mm-hmm.
her drinking problem,
Yep.
and that she couldn't give me an apology right now because it wasn't the right time.
Okay. Now, you had mentioned to me before that this has been a habit, or this has been a sort of a continual thing throughout your life,
Hmm.
and we identified that as possibly one of the reasons for your low self esteem. Is your mother continually disappointing you and letting you down and
Hmm.
verbally uh, taking sort of a negative tone with you? Um, but being 28 now, I was wondering, do you have any perspective for where you are now to where you were when you're a teenager, when all these things were, starting to really take off for you?
Um, I guess I have some,
Okay.
but um, you know, back then, having a lot more of these issues, I felt like I couldn't get anything done in my life. I didn't feel like I had the ability to move forward in life,
Mm-hmm.
and so I'm now at the point where, as we talked about before, I'm in school
Right.
and I'm working a job that's related to my degree, and I'm engaged. Uh, uh, but I think that I must be doing better in that way.
Okay.
But um, I, I, I just I feel like if when I'm talking to my mom, it's sort of like time stands still in that way. It's like it doesn't ever change. It's the relationship doesn't change, and it matters. When I was a kid, I could have all these other things going on, but as long as this thing's going on, and I'm talking to my mom, it doesn't change.
Okay. All right. Um, what it sounds like to me, and we talked about this before in previous sessions, is it sounds like to me you're still having a little difficulty setting boundaries,
Mm-hmm.
um, making sure other people know what's acceptable and what's not acceptable in terms of their treatment towards you.
Mm-hmm.
Um, Talk to me a little bit about what you think are the major stumbling blocks for you right now. What's the worst case scenario if you said, "Mom, I need this from you," and she wasn't able to give it to you? What's the worst case scenario?
Well, that wouldn't be too much different than what it is now, would it?
Well, exactly, and that's kind of what I'm getting at is what's driving the anxiety? What's driving the fear of confrontation? A healthy confrontation.
I I guess maybe some of it's tied up with this idea of disappointing her,
Okay.
and and even the idea of bringing this up is like, going to disappoint her because I'm questioning her,
Right.
and she had all this stuff happen, and and she's made it through it some way or another, but um, I I don't know. I try to do it, and it's just, it's one of those things where I feel like, well, maybe I could do it tomorrow,
Okay.
and then tomorrow becomes another tomorrow. It just
Right.
keeps going.
Right. So, what I'm hearing from you right now is this is just sort of a spiral, and it just keeps going around and around and around,
Yeah,
and we're not really able to break the pattern.
it's hard. I mean, it's relationships with other people. It's a little easier to say what you need to say in them, but with your parents, it's really difficult. These are people who've known you your entire life, and I mean, people tell you that you try to do things to make yourself better, but you're also ultimately trying to prove yourself to them,
Sure.
and I don't feel like that's ever done with me. It's just nonstop.
Well, and that's a really, it's a very common fear, and it's a really common source of anxiety for a lot of people, are the expectations that are put on them by their parents. All right, let's kind of change a little bit.
Okay.
You had mentioned in other previous sessions that some of the friction with your mother is causing some frustration with your fiance in your
Hmm.
in your in your relationship.
Yeah.
Talk to me a little bit about what what how it translates when your mother treats you poorly, you accept the treatment that your mother gives you, and then you take that home with your fiance. What is Talk to me a little bit about that.
I think it's maybe because it's it's the attention that I get from my mom. I mean, it's either they don't get any attention or get some attention, even if it's negative. And I've been always willing to take that negative attention than
Right.
to have nothing, because then if there's nothing, if there's no acceptance or anything, it's just nothing. You know.
Right.
Um, I I try not to bring it to my fiance, but it this is all intertwined. It's these relationships, and they're all together, and I guess one of them is obviously going to have some effect on another one,
Okay.
and uh, I I don't know. It's hard confronting a parent, when
Mhm.
they've been there in some way or form over time. You can say those things, but then, like, I don't know. I guess maybe the issue I'm having on the anxiety of is I think it's gonna be worse,
Okay.
despite what we just said before.
Mhm.
Maybe she won't want to talk to me anymore. Or I don't know.
Do you ever feel like you treat your fiance unfairly, or maybe have an outburst where you are pointing your frustration towards her where it should be placed somewhere else? Do you ever feel like you do that?
Probably. I can't really think of anything she's done that would make me want to, get upset her or yell at her.
Right.
But I see what you're saying now with, with maybe my mom, relation to my mom doing that. But I, I'm having trouble coping with that, and making that work, which is why I'm here.
Right. Okay. Um, how do you? Let's just say hypothetically, your mom was completely out of the picture. Um, do you feel like
Are you like dead or something, or?
no,
Okay.
no, she's just out of the picture for right
Okay.
now. How do you feel like the rest of the dynamic in your life is in terms of relationships? Do you have the same difficulty setting boundaries? Do you have the same difficulty with codependency? Um, or is it strictly with your mother, or is it with your mother and it just sort of disseminates down to the other relationships and it affects them?
I think it's different. Um, when you have a parent who you're trying to get some sort of positive relationship with
Mm-hmm.
or positive emotion, you'll take anything you get, you know. Um, I think the way that has affected my relationship with fiance is that, you know, obviously I'm insecure.
Mm-hmm.
And so I feel like I have to constantly, you know, do better.
Mm-hmm.
And like, you know, so she doesn't like decide that, you know, she hates me and doesn't want to be with me anymore. So I have to constantly work at it, you know, and it's always like I got to do more, you know, because I'm afraid of disappointing her
Okay.
because of how much I've had to deal with that, you know. But I think it's a little bit different. I can see how you say that it influences it, but obviously the relationship you have with a parent is not going to be the same as like a fiance or a girlfriend or something.
That's got to be exhausting for you. It sounds like you're always on guard. It sounds like you're always trying to make sure you're saying the right thing. That's got to just be emotionally and mentally exhausting.
I don't really think about it that way. I just do.
Okay.
You know, and I've always felt like if that's what I have to do to make things work, then that's what I do to make things work.
Do you ever feel like your fiance doesn't support you, or rather, maybe she's part of the problem in your relationship with your mother?
I don't think she's part of the problem. That she's been very supportive, and you know, I like I said, I constantly feel like I have to keep proving myself to her
Mm-hmm.
because, you know, if she doesn't, I think she'll leave me. Even, you know, she said before, do you have any evidence of that? I said no, but I still feel that, you know, every
Mm-hmm.
day.
Right.
But I don't know.
When you're home with your fiance and the subject of your mother comes up, who generally brings it up? Is it you or is it your fiance?
That's my fiance.
Okay. What are some of the typical things she'll say?
I know that whenever she brings it up, at this point, it's always going to be. I think she's trying to think of me in the conversations, but I know whenever she brings up my mother, it's going to be because she sees my mother doing some sort of disservice towards me,
Mm-hmm.
and so she'll question that,
Right.
you know. And then,
So you'd say she's trying to defend you.
yeah, and she'll like, you know, she'll say things like, you know, like a couple weeks ago, I had to actually go out late at night to find my mom because she went out drinking and she literally couldn't find her way home.
Wow.
So I told my fiance I was going to do it, and she said, "Well, why does it have to be you?" And I said, because it has to be. I don't know who else is going to do it."
Well, that's a valid question, though. She's showing concern for you, and that's
Yeah.
you know that's a valid question. Is why does it have to be you? She's an adult, so why does that task fall to you?
Because I don't think anyone else will do it.
And you had mentioned before earlier that you felt as though, and I think this was very insightful on your part, as though your relationship with your mother was a very codependent relationship where you were almost the parent and she was the child. Now that you're having to take care of her and make sure that she's home and that she's safe and she's not doing harm to herself or other people. Do you recognize when your fiance points these things out that she's trying to be supportive, or do you see them as negative comments?
I think I see them as both. It starts off whenever she says it, I will first feel defensive.
Mm-hmm.
And that, I don't think that helps the conversation because, if you're going to put someone in a defensive mode, start conversation, they're going to be, unease, excuse me.
Right.
But I realize as the conversation goes on, I realize that what she's saying is because she is looking out for my benefit.
Mm-hmm.
It's just difficult to explain to her because she doesn't have the same relationship with her parent that I do with mine.
Sure.
So, I'm worried that, there's times even whenever she's not treating me as well as I try to treat her. I'm not saying that I'm probably great all the time at it, but I don't feel like my stepdad will do it, and I feel like it has to be done. I mean, I get angry with some of the things she does, but who else is going to take care of her?
Okay, so when you feel this anger, as you put it, do you feel guilty about being angry? Or do you feel, though, that it's a righteous feeling, that you should have this feeling based on her behavior?
I feel like at first I am righteous,
Mm-hmm.
but it never ends that way. At the end of it, with these discussions with my fiance, it's always, angry first, but at the end, it's, about me, about her, manipulating me.
Okay.
And so, but I just, yeah, I got to a point a couple of years ago where, I really thought that, I'm trying to be the better person about this
Mm-hmm.
and trying to help her. And then, at the same time, as much as I get angry, she has my mom, and my dad's not my dad, but my stepdad. He's not really there for her. So, it's.
Okay. I know this is hard for you. I know it's hard to talk about these things. But I do appreciate you talking about them and being open about it. That being said, one of the first things when you came to see me, one of the things you were most concerned about was your relationship with your fiance.
Mm-hmm.
One thing I would like to ask is, have you two ever gone to couples counseling to talk about your communication issues and maybe some of the frustrations you're feeling there?
No, we haven't. And I don't think it was put forward because, I don't know, it's just like the idea didn't come up, and it's not really like, where I feel like, like in a church or something, they usually, if you're like a member of a church, they make you sign up for that sort of thing. Mm-hmm. So I didn't feel like it was really necessary, considering that we're both, adults.
Right.
But no, I hadn't thought of it.
Would she be maybe willing or open to the idea of seeing a therapist as a couple?
I don't know. I feel like if we do, she'll blame me because it's not her fault. It's mine. And so I would be dragging her into this. And I don't want to put that on her. She has to deal with a lot as it is.
All right.
So I don't want to make her feel like she has to go through that.
Okay. Well, fair enough. I just wanted to, because you had mentioned it when you initially came in, I've been thinking about it for a couple sessions now, and it seems a lot of our discussions tend to gravitate towards your relationship and your communication issues and some of the guilt you're feeling regarding maybe some of the misplaced frustration with your mom, and it's causing the issues with your fiance. I thought maybe it might be a time to maybe point out that, you know, it is okay if you two also wanted to seek couples counseling together. And if you don't, that's fine. I just wanted to throw it out there.
No, I appreciate that. I think this is more about how I'm dealing with this, though.
Okay.
So,
But as part of your support structure, she's an important part of your life.
yeah, I don't want to. I don't want to have to burden her with more than she already has right now. So,
All right. Fair enough. I just wanted to throw it out there as a possibility down the road. Now, last week we had talked a little bit about after, you sort of opened up more about your mom and some of her recent behaviors.
yeah,
And we had talked about maybe you writing a letter since you really weren't that comfortable. You felt like maybe you would back down with a verbal confrontation. How is the letter going so far?
well, I don't know if I have like per se a final draft, but I think about it a lot.
Okay.
I think about what I'm going to say to my mom, and I have those ideas, and I think about them a lot and work them over in my head. I've written down some,
Okay.
but I haven't written down everything. And I don't know how much I should put in it. And I don't want to sound too overwhelming. Like
Right.
I'm just dumping. So I got some things written down though.
Okay. Well, I mean, this is an exercise for you, and you should only put in there what you feel comfortable talking to your mom about.
Okay.
And if you feel like it's enough, then it's enough. It doesn't matter if it's one paragraph or 3 pages. Whatever you feel comfortable with is what you should do. But I'm glad to see that you're making some progress with it, and that you are still going forward with the idea. I think that's going to be a valuable tool.
I'm trying to think. I try to think on it more. And I think that maybe if I think on it more, I might be able to express it better. So that's why I've been thinking about
Good.
it more.
Good. I'm glad. I'm happy to hear that. With regards to that, and this is something we haven't really talked about much before. So far, we've just been talking about your emotions and your feelings and your anxiety towards writing the letter. What I want to talk a little bit about now is how do you deal with the reaction to the letter from your mother, in terms of whether it's positive reaction or a negative reaction. Do you feel like you'll be able to stand your ground if it's a negative reaction? Or,
I don't think there's going to be a positive reaction to it.
okay.
I think that's what's making this harder too. Is knowing that, you're going into a situation that's going to be agitated by something that you do, and whenever it's over, it's not going to be calm or sublime or everyone's going to feel a lot better afterwards.
Right.
The purpose of it is to say those things, and then she will feel incredibly rotten about it. So I'm not preparing for a positive answer, and I think that might be a little realistic too.
Okay.
Because I think if I ask for a positive answer, I don't think it's going to happen.
In your mind, what would be worse? A negative reaction where she's angry towards you and the fact that you wrote this letter to her, or a completely neutral reaction where it doesn't even matter that you seem to make the effort?
The worst action is going to be I write the letter, I give it to her, and then she says she never wants to see me again.
Okay.
That's the worst reaction.
Well, that's a very real fear. is is that possibility in your mind? Is that's what kind of causing you to kind of think a little bit more and maybe not be as proactive with the letter and getting it done? Do you think that's maybe causing you to kind of drag it out a little bit?
Well, I hadn't thought about that way, but probably
Okay.
because, you know, it's going into a situation which, one, is not going to end well, and two, it's not going to end well with my mother. So there's no one's going to win from that.
Well, I caution you not to think of it in terms of win or loss. I would think it would be better for you to think of it in terms of your own personal mental health and well-being. And as you self said earlier, when I asked a question about in the same vein, you said, what's the difference? That's kind of how it is now. So if the worst case scenario happened and she says she doesn't want to see you again, talk to me a little bit about what you're actually losing out on with that reaction.
In a negative or positive way, my mother wouldn't be in my life. And
Exactly.
I've never had that before.
Okay.
So,
But if you are able to stand your ground, can you see that in a positive way in terms of your own personal growth? Being able to make a stand, set boundaries.
I don't know. I don't honestly know.
All right.
Because, you know, you were saying before, you know, it's my mental health, but, you know, where is it stopping my mental health and also deal with, you know, hurting someone else's feelings to the point where it's almost irreparable.
Well, keep in mind now, whereas as we talked about before, you have responsibility in the outcome of this relationship, but so does she.
Mm-hmm.
We both have an equal amount of responsibility here, whereas she's had certain behaviors and you've allowed them to keep occurring, as we talked about before. So if you put out what you need emotionally as her son and say, hey, Mom, I need this from you. Can you please give this to me and understand why I'm asking for it? Then it's her choice. It's not something you've done. It's not something negative that you've done. It's her choice to either say, I understand and I can be empathetic toward you and I have done some things that I regret. Or she can take it the other way and say, you know what? I choose not to be in this relationship anymore. And I can certainly understand why that would cause you a lot of anxiety. Because no one wants to think in those terms when dealing with their parents of any sort of finality of a relationship. All right. Well, we're about running out of time, but I wanted to just check in with you and kind of see how you're feeling right now.
I'm, you know, still feeling anxious.
Okay.
Sometimes feel like I'm feeling anxious, like I'm being pulled in different perspectives.
Mm-hmm.
That's a little dizzying sometimes. And it's like trying to see two different things at once and trying to get those things to come together, but they're not quite coming together.
Mm-hmm.
So it's kind of, kind of like seeing things in like 3D, and it's like you put them both together, it kind of gives you a headache.
Right.
Sort of like that.
Sounds to me like what you're saying is you're feeling a little overwhelmed.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. All right. Well, as we talked about before, this isn't this problem, has taken decades to happen. It's going to take a little bit of time for the process to work itself out, and for you to feel better about who you are and what you need to do. So, but I do think you're on the right track. I feel as though with your insight and your dedication to the process and your ability and your willingness to really work on this, it tells me that you're really serious about this and you want to conquer some of these issues that you're dealing with. So that's really good.
Okay.
Okay. So then next week, what we'll talk about is, we'll check in on the letter again, and I would like to dive into a little bit about more specifically some of the ideas of when you were in those situations, how you handled them, and versus how you would handle them now.
You mean like situations as when I was younger?
When you were younger, when you were always worried and you were always anxious and you were scared. Now that you have a little bit of distance, some time from those situations, I'd like to start talking about, with a new perspective, how you would deal with those problems today if they presented themselves.
Okay.
Okay. Is there anything else you want to work on more specifically next week?
Not unless I think of something before I come in next time.
All right. Tom, I really appreciate you coming in. I know this is a really difficult and very sensitive subject for you. But I just want you to know that I appreciate it, and we'll keep working at it.
Okay.
All right?